Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our Texas Children in Nature Network Health webinar, How to Talk to Kids About Climate Change. My name is Sarah Coles, and I'm the Executive Director of Texas Children in Nature Network, and we are so excited to have you with us today. We are recording our session today. Thank you so much for joining us. To save bandwidth for all of our attendees and for a clean recording, we ask for you to turn off your cameras and mute yourselves. I will be monitoring the chat, so please feel free to add comments and questions in the chat. I'll be sharing them with our presenter, Kate, as well as trying to answer some questions for you as well, if it's something like a link. Richard is running tech for us today. Thank you so much, Richard. With that in mind, if your name doesn't match the name you registered with, if you could let Richard know through a private message or change it on your Zoom. And the way you change that is hover over your name. You'll see 3 little dots and it'll give you the option to change your name. As I said, we are recording the session. Alice will be sending it in a follow-up email in the coming days. If you're uncomfortable with your name showing, you can change it to anonymous and then private message Richard with your name for our attendance. And again, if your Zoom name doesn't match, go ahead and let Richard know. If you're needing a certificate for this webinar, your name will need to match what goes on that certificate for us to be able to give you attendance credit. Then go ahead and do our land acknowledgement. Texas Children in Nature Network is headquartered in Austin, and as such, I'm on the ancestral and unceded land of the Tonkawa, Comanche, and Sana people. Our ongoing colonial presence on indigenous lands compels us to take action now to counteract the effects of colonization. The work we do through the Texas Children in Nature Network is one small step towards that effort. I'm going to put some links in the chat about land acknowledgements and about those people groups in just a moment. Please feel free to check those out. And I'd like to go ahead and welcome our speaker today. Kate Carmichael is with ATX Counseling, and we're so excited to have her with us today. Take it away, Kate.
Hello, welcome. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. As everybody just kind of gets settled in, I do want to ask questions for you guys. I have like a little poll. This is just for me as a therapist that I find interesting. So if you don't mind writing in the chat, I'm always curious, how many people work with children on a daily basis? If you can write maybe like a yes or anything in the chat, because I'm just curious. And you can include if you have children, if you're interacting with kids on a daily basis, or maybe weekly or monthly. I'm just curious to see, just to get kind of a pulse on our audience. Okay. Have a 16-year-old? Okay, good. Oh, I have 2 3-year-olds at home, Elizabeth. Okay, good. My other question is, how many people would consider themselves empaths? So an empath is somebody that is very aware of the feelings of other people, or they also typically are very aware of nature, and you're the type of person that notice seasons as they change, that notice the weather, that notice if somebody comes around you that's upset or is having a big feeling. You can, wow, a lot of people are in, wow, okay, this is interesting. Good. Okay, looks like we're in good company. Okay, good. So I'm always curious about the people that tend to come to these. For me, and my workshops tend to be very empathic. And so we always look at that as first of all, one of the greatest strengths that we can have as people. It's oftentimes how people are really drawn to you, is your ability to be empathic. But like we say in therapy, it can often have a flip side of the coin. So empathic people can also get overwhelmed. I say this with love because I am empathic, tend towards anxiety sometimes and big feelings, and you may be called sensitive, you may be called these things that don't always feel so positive, but I'm here to help you through that today. And we're going to be talking about children and their feelings around climate change. And in order to do that, we first have to begin with our own thoughts and feelings around climate change. So let's get started on I'm going to try to see if I can figure out technology slide. So I have a loose itinerary that I'm wanting to talk about today. first of all, we're going to talk about how to engage with this topic, climate change. Really big, scary topic. And I think a lot of people just hearing it can have a feeling. So you may be aware of feelings coming up. Even just hearing that term has become such a hot button issue. I want you to leave feeling much more confident on if there are kids or adults or anybody that you come in contact with that's needing help or having big feelings. I want you to feel more confident in helping them. Some do's and don'ts when talking about these conversations. And then I was hoping to have some time at the end for questions and discussion. Okay, but first we breathe. This is for my empaths. So what I want everybody to do is come back into your body. If you feel comfortable, I want you to close your eyes. This is also for people that may be watching this on YouTube in the future. I want you to close your eyes, or if that's uncomfortable to you, just look down towards your lap. I want you to come back inside your body. Take a big breath in and feel the air come in and out of your lungs. And what I want you to notice is your worries and all the thoughts and feelings that may be coming up for you today are beginning to slowly drift by. And if it's comfortable for you, I want you to imagine a deep sense of peace begins to come over your body. And you may be noticing a color. See if you can become aware of a sense of calm, peace. If you've given it a color, I want you to imagine that that color is beginning to slowly envelop you. And see if you can breathe into that. What I want you to imagine in this exercise is if you are feeling really big feelings related to climate change, imagine there's a really safe, comforting person there for you that allows you to talk about it, that allows you to feel secure and comfortable. So you have a home base, somebody that knows you, that accepts you, that acknowledges your feelings. See if you can feel that sense of connection with other people. Breathe in there. Take one last deep breath in. And you're feeling completely calm, completely at peace. You're giving yourself a much needed moment today to talk about a really important topic. Okay, I'm going to count backwards from 3, 2, 1, and you can blink your eyes open if you have your eyes closed. And come back and join me on the screen. So we're practicing helping our bodies regulate, which is what we're going to be working on when we're talking to kids about climate change as well. If our bodies are regulated, then kids can do what we call co-regulate with us. So as we begin to feel calm and secure, we want to be a secure attachment figure. For kids or really anybody that we may come in. Oh, that's so nice, Elizabeth from Eco Rise. Thank you. The more that you are feeling safer inside your own body, the more able you are to handle really tough things that come up. Okay. Just whenever, if you start to get stirred up during this workshop, just come back to that color. If you imagine a color during the exercise, I want you to see if you can hold that in your heart. So we're maybe talking about some things that could stir people up. Okay, this slide, I just want to say thank you because I cannot think of a more important topic than this one. And I feel like as adults in the world, our job is to shepherd children and the environment and to be people that we hope this next generation becomes. So your willingness to come and engage with such a tricky, complicated, hot button topic is the most important thing you can do. This is the first important step, is just the courage to come. And a lot of people will see this topic and go, nope, and scoot right on past. So the fact that you're here and you're willing to engage is one of the bravest, most important pieces of this whole process is understanding, is just a willingness to talk about it because it can be very complicated. So I really appreciate you being here. I grew up in a very rural place in Jackson, Georgia. I don't know if there's any Georgia in the house, but it was a really hardworking white collar community, blue collar community that I think had a hard time talking about really big feelings. So for me as a child, I was always a very sensitive person. And I got the sense that my feelings weren't welcome and that they made people uncomfortable. And I spent a lot of time trying to contain myself. I remember in school, I had a teacher one time, a science teacher, that told me in mental health was not even talked about. I mean, this was probably 92 or so. That term wasn't even being used. So ideas like depression or anxiety or being overwhelmed, was like nobody in my hometown talked about those feelings. So I had a teacher one time that said, if you are having, if you're feeling down, so she didn't even use the terms depression or anxiety, but she said, if you're feeling down, the key is to work. So you have to find a job that allows you to work really hard, because whenever you're focused on work, then you're not aware of these feelings. And I remember thinking as I guess I was like, sixth grade, God, how hard am I going to have to work to run away from my feelings? Because I have a lot of really big feelings. And even then, it just like, I thought, I don't know if that's possible for me. And so to find people that are also willing to talk about these big feelings, I actually find to be relieving. So I like coming to things like this because I like being able to talk about big, complicated topics. I find it to be empowering. So I appreciate you coming, and I just want to say thanks. This is really the most important step that you can take. Okay, so here is the situation at hand. When we're talking about topics that are filled with uncertainty, so whether you are going through really complicated times, divorce, grief, your own mental health, you're seeing friends and family struggling, it is full of uncertainty. And anybody that tries to tell you that there is some easy one-size-fits-all solution to helping people navigate difficult, uncertain times is trying to sell you something, because there is not. And everybody needs something different. I think that's a really key takeaway. So I have two kids. They're twins. They're 3 years old. And they, even identical twins, need very different things. Remy, I think, is a child that really wants acknowledgement, and then he wants to figure out his own solutions. So I think he really needs from me, hey, I see you, I can see you're struggling with this. And then he wants to figure out things for himself. Whereas my other son, Hugo, likes a little more hands-on. He likes a little more interaction. He wants me to give him ideas and suggestions on how, also to be acknowledged, but to be like there with him as he's trying to come up with solutions, or help him come up with solutions. So I just want you to know that there is no one size fits all. We're trying to have relationship. It is all about relationship. There are rarely, when we're talking about a complicated topic, something you can say to make it go away, or to fix it, or to resolve it, or to magically, otherwise we would. If we had a magic wand, we would take away all the pain, and this would not be a problem. I'm wondering, since we have quite a few empathic people here, are you guys also, do you feel like a sense of responsibility? Like if you see somebody struggling with things? Do you often just write in the comments if you sometimes feel like a pull to want to help them, or to maybe you also feel upset if you see someone sad? Because sometimes these two things can go hand in hand. If we feel a desire to help, it can also come with quite a sense of responsibility, and that can come with some feelings of overwhelm. So if you're someone that tends to get pulled in, it's something to be aware of for sure. Because if we're working, and giving and giving and giving and giving, it can feel, we can burn out. So I do want us to all be aware of how that might show up. So if we can have an understanding that there is pain and uncertainty and a lot of big feelings around climate change, then we can begin to find ways to help ourselves navigate this difficult topic and other people, like kids. I think I remember when I started being a therapist, I have a mentor, Bill Woodburn, and I would come in to supervision and just say, there's all these really sad stories, and what do I do, and how do I help everybody? And he told me two critical lessons, Bill Woodburn's lessons on life. One, pain and uncertainty is part of being alive. And number two, we cannot change rule number one. So if you have an understanding that those are the two scary, hard realities, there is pain and uncertainty, and we're not going to be able to make that go away, unfortunately. I think it can create better connection. That is what heals. It is the connection, giving people space, acknowledging their feelings. That is what ultimately will help people take action in their own lives. It will empower them. It will help them come up with their own solutions, and it helps us too. Otherwise, we're just going to burn out. There's a high chance of feeling really responsible for the world. That's quite a burden to bear. It's quite a burden to bear. I love this quote so much. This book has been so popular, but there is this really interesting book about, they did this long-term study. I don't know if you guys have read this. It's called The Good Life. And they did the longest longitudinal study about happiness. I think it's a study out of Harvard, where they study people that have been able to find a sense of peace and happiness. And so it's a very paradoxical idea that it's people able to realize how complicated life is. The good life is a complicated life for everyone. The good life is joyful and challenging, full of love, but also pain. And it never strictly happens. Instead, the good life unfolds through time. I love that. It's never happening. Instead, it's unfolding through time. It is a process. It includes turmoil, calm, lightness, burdens, struggles, achievements, setbacks, leaps forward, and terrible falls. That is so painful to sit with. I think we all work really hard, particularly oftentimes in American culture, to be happy and to find what we can do to be happier and how to manage any kind of negative feeling. And so I love this quote, because what it captures is, I think the more we can do things like this together and talk about these difficult topics, the more that we can experience more joy, and the less burdened we are by the pain around us. I know that sounds very paradoxical. So if you have any thoughts or questions, feel free to put it in the chat, or if you just disagree, I'm very open to that. If you don't feel like any of this is true and you don't like it, I'm open to hearing your thoughts and feelings. But I feel like it's certainly where I came from. A lot of really well-meaning adults tried to shield me from painful things, and I wasn't given a lot of space to talk about these difficult topics. Not only sadness and grief, but also, there wasn't a lot of space to talk about sex and identity and more existential struggles. So I'm trying to just create a movement where we're talking about this more openly, because that's going to be the first major step in helping kids feel more comfortable when they're having feelings, and adults, related to climate change. So that's where we are starting from, is the idea that it's no one's job here to make it go away. It is our job to find peace in the discomfort. I know that is hard. I know that that is hard. I understand, like, that's not easy. That's an ongoing process. But I think hopefully it can be relieving as well, that we're not gonna make this go away. So one of the guiding principles, I guess one of the things I encourage people to think about is there's often two ways that I see people when they're going through a really difficult experience, or they're seeing other people go through a really difficult experience. I know I've done both of these things, by the way. But one tendency is to avoid and put my head in the sand and try to pretend it's not happening, which I think is very limiting. The more that we try to push away difficult feelings, the more that they can show up in other areas of our life. So one way is to minimize when something scary is happening. And the other way, you see people way over-identify with the problem. So if you're a person that over-identifies, then you're feeling very responsible, and you're feeling like you must figure this out, and you must come up with solutions, and you must, so anytime you feel like a sense of musts or should or weight or heaviness, I want you to be aware that there may be a way that you're really identifying with the problem, and you're putting it on your shoulders and trying to, and you may experience anger at people that don't, or those feelings are often related. On the other side, if we are minimizing feelings, so this is somebody comes in with a difficult problem, or a child says, I'm scared about climate change. Oh, you have nothing to worry about. It's not going to happen in our lifetime. There's nothing wrong. We're going to figure this out. It's no big deal. And that can leave a lot of disconnect between you and the other person, because what you're missing is their feelings, and you're maybe missing your own feelings. So both of those things are very common. What we are talking about today is building a third path. And so the third path is a more understanding response. It's an ability to meet people where they are, and meet yourself where you are, and have your feelings. And so I love, love, love this clip. Brene Brown, you guys may have seen it, gave a talk about this topic, and somebody did a animated short to go with it, and I love it so much. So it's only about 3 minutes long. So I'm gonna show this clip. If it doesn't work, let me know. I'm gonna play it right now.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person, or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole, and they come from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. And we do it all the time because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Rarely can a response make something better. I love that. I'm going to turn this off now. Let's see if I can figure that out. Okay. What makes something better is connection. So lovely. All right, now I'm going to try to exit out of this. So I'm wondering if people, just so I can get a read on the audience and help you sort through some of these feelings that may be coming up, do you tend to over-identify, or do you tend to want to try to silver lining? Both? Karen over-identifies? Over-identify with climate change? Okay, so it seems like that's where we're going to be working today. Anybody else feel, and when I say identify, a real sense of responsibility like that, you tend to empathize naturally. So that video is sort of, you tend to want to go down and be in the hole with somebody. So let's work with that. Anybody else for young children, those silver lining? Yeah. Which may mean, Kate, that you feel particularly protective, that you feel very protective of the kids that are scared, which is lovely. That's where a lot of these tendencies come from, I think. So I'm going to work with the tendency to over-identify today, unless anybody else has. Actually, in some ways, I think that can be easier. I used to be somebody with this topic that would try to put my head in the sand. And so one of the reasons that I'm doing more talks like this is because I personally have a better relationship with nature if I am talking about it and connecting with other people that are struggling with it. So, but I think if you over-identify, in some ways, you already have the empathetic part, and it can be easier to walk back. I feel like it's harder sometimes to take somebody that can be a bit avoidant, like me. No shame, no blame here. It's just these are tendencies, and help them feel more empathetic. It's a little bit harder sometimes to teach. So what we're going to be talking about today is some strategies to help you when somebody's hurting, not feel like you. One of the things that I always talk about with parents is if you have a child that's drowning in the water and really upset and struggling and going through something big, they need somebody on the dock who's really got 2 feet on the ground, who's really secure, who's very solid, so that they can throw the safety vest and help pull them back in. If everybody jumps in the water and everybody's upset and scared and overwhelmed, then nobody's on the dock. So but I think what can happen for people, at least in my experience, is if you get on the dock and you see people drowning, then you may feel guilty, or you may feel like a good person is somebody who's also jumping in to help rescue everybody. So there may be a rescue impulse. And so I know that that's why a lot of people go into my profession, especially. So what you're having to manage is if I see somebody hurting and I'm just holding space for that and I'm not trying to fix it or over-identify with it, and there's a little bit of space between me and that other person, I might feel guilty about that. Like I'm not doing enough. And there may be, just a spoiler, there may be a little bit, I don't know, this is for me, but there's like a perfectionistic tendency. So these often go hand in hand. I tend to want to get it just right. And I feel like if I don't get it just right for kids, that I'm going to destroy them or devastate them or make it worse for them. And so I'm so scared of making it worse that I often will underfunction or like just back up. And that can be lonely for a child. So one of the things that I will often think about is, I don't know if you guys have seen that movie, Boyhood. It's such a Texas movie. So I'm assuming a lot of people have seen it. I don't know. But there's a scene with the dad in the movie where he is talking about sex at the bowling alley with his two kind of teenage kids. And he is, you can tell he's like fumbling, imperfect parent, not getting it right, feeling really awkward. And you can just see on his face, he's like, okay, we're going in. Like, we're talking about this. It is awkward. Like, the son tries to get up and go to the bathroom, and he's like, nope, we're all going to sit and talk about it. And I think I would rather be the fumbling parent or the fumbling caregiver, fumbling adult than the perfect one. Because I think what would be worse is to have a therapist who's perfect and says everything perfectly, but has no sense of humanity, or, that you then feel like you have to be perfect around. So I think it's better to be the fumbling adult that doesn't get it quite right, or maybe kind of awkward, than the perfect one. So I would encourage you to think about that as we begin to talk about more practical ways of talking to kids about climate change. But that's our guiding principle. So the guiding principle is there's a tendency to run for the hills when we're faced with really scary big things, or a tendency to want to jump in the water and rescue. And so what we're trying to figure out is where can we really place our feet on the ground? Where can we feel really grounded and comfortable talking about these big topics? That is our goal. Oops. Started it again. Are people with me? Is this working?
Yes.
I feel like
I think maybe you're still on the guiding principle page.
Okay. I'm gonna keep going. Okay, now moving along. So that's what we were just exploring on the last slide, is that you don't have to get it just right. And some of the more powerful moments I've had as a therapist is when I got it wrong. Somebody said something vulnerable and maybe I wasn't as available as I wanted to be, or I really wanted to get it right. And so I sort of left them hanging in a vulnerable moment. And so I'll come back later and say, hey, I was really thinking about what you shared, and I felt like I wasn't as available to you as I wanted to be. Can we talk about it again? So I want you to know that many, many, many times you have a chance to come back. If you don't get it just right, and we're going to talk later in this workshop on just some specific ways of talking about it. But I just want you to know, if you don't get it just right, you don't nail it, you are kind of fumbling, you can always come back and say, I do want to talk more about what you were sharing. And I feel like I wasn't as available to you as I wanted to be. Can we talk again? So you get another chance. And I actually think that can be more strengthening to a relationship than getting it perfect. You don't have to get it right. Okay, so now we're going to talk about more practical things. Somebody's having a big feeling, it doesn't always appear the way you may think. It can be a person that is defiant. They may be talking about feeling bored. That's a way to avoid painful feelings, is when kids are just withdrawn or bored or not paying attention. So these are things that you want to look for. We want to think about helping people. I'm not going to say not only children, adults too, label feelings. I can see that you're really worried about the things that you saw on the news when there was a climate disaster. And I want you to know I see that. That sometimes is everything to somebody that hasn't been acknowledged. That is exactly what they're needing. they want to feel seen. So you just saying, I see how worried you are. I see how angry you feel. I see that you're not sure if this is going to work out okay and you're confused. So we're just noticing, being aware, and acknowledging. And that will often invite more conversation. So here are some ways to start open-ended questions. What are you feeling? What's this like for you? And then you might want to offer a guess. It seems like you're feeling scared. I imagine that you're feeling angry about the things that you saw on the news. For really young kids, it's helpful to have a third way of approaching it. So can you show me with your big feelings? Can you show me with a picture? Can you show me with your favorite stuffed animal, what it's like, so sometimes it's like they need another kind of external figure to describe the feeling, and they can help identify other people's feelings, but not their own. So you can say, can you show me, if you draw a picture, can you show me some of the big feelings? And then they may just use colors or to express feelings. That's with very young kids. They often don't have the verbal ability. So that's why labeling is important, because you as an adult are helping them have the words to describe big feelings. And I say young children, but I think that's important for teenagers too. I know somebody in the audience has a teenage child at home. So I think it can be very self-regulating to have somebody help you name a feeling, because you may not have the words yet to identify what you're feeling. And so I don't love the way this is worded, resist the temptation, because I feel like that even sounds kind of blamey. But what you want to think about is just, what is your impulse? If you see somebody upset, just you're just noticing, wow, I'm really having an impulse to try to fix this, and give like practical tips or solutions or take action. And can I just, what would it be like for me to just hold space? That is hard. For me, I don't like it. I really prefer to give tips and practical solutions. So it's something I'm always working on too, on how to give people some space to have a feeling on a difficult topic. So the goal is not to get rid of the feelings, but to acknowledge and validate. Which is very powerful. So another thing we want to think about is being honest, because I do think that kids especially can feel if you're being disingenuous and you're saying things that aren't maybe exactly true. So you're wanting to, so one of the ways you can think about it is like in our session today. If I came in and said, this is no big deal, then you would leave feeling confused and hurt and probably annoyed, because this would have been a waste of your time, and frustrated. I can imagine that's how I would feel if I came in and said like, what are we all worried about? This is no big deal. Ignore it. Some version of that. Then you leave feeling unseen. If I came in and just was losing it, oh my gosh, what does this mean for me? And I'm scared. What do I do? What do we do? And like, the house is on fire. The house is on fire. Then there may be an impulse to take care of me and my needs. And so that's a lot of pressure. And then you may feel even more, both of those are disconnecting. So you, as a safe adult in the room, are trying to find a way to allow people to have feelings. Again, we're coming back to, we're not going to over-identify and we're not going to minimize, because both are very isolating. We're going to try to join in a way that feels healthy for both of us. And it's going to be healthier in our relationship if we are honest in a way that is age appropriate for a child. And this is in any big topic that anybody may be going through. Climate change is one full of uncertainty and confusion, but there are a lot of things that kids are going to face and adults are going to face that are confusing. So this can be anything that they may be going through, COVID or death or a divorce, or we're trying to find a way to be really honest that is appropriate to a developmental level. So here you can see, I just tried to write a few ways of saying it that might help. And you obviously can put this in your own words. I was just trying to give some words to an overall kind of tone and sentiment. how to take care of our planet, it does bring up a lot of big feelings. And a lot of grown-ups have different ideas, and grown-ups don't always see eye to eye. It's scary when things are uncertain and there are so many big feelings. That is not your fault. So that's an overall feeling that we're giving, and that's not your fault. Because kids tend to see everything through the eyes of, if I were better. Yes, I totally agree with this, Sandra. I love what you're saying right now. There are people working on it, absolutely. And also contribute to working on, yes. Love that. That's exact. You nailed it, Sandra. I applaud you. You've done this before. You must be a teacher. Are you a teacher? So that's exactly the sentiment, because if everybody looks in the chat at what Sandra has written, you can get the sense that she has her feet on the ground. Like, she feels very sturdy, that there are really smart people working on this. And that makes me as an adult feel like, yeah, she's a teacher. So you do this, you know what you're doing. It makes me feel like, okay, I'm not alone. And there are people on it. Because oftentimes what creates fear for a child is the feeling that there's no adult in the room monitoring. So it would be like you're out on the playground alone and there's nobody safe that's going to protect you. But that is a very reassuring sentiment. And I think that's it's a very empowering way you just said that. Love it. Okay, very good. So I want you to know that you can talk to me if you have big feelings, and I'm going to do my best to listen. And so here's another one that I came up with. I see you're having some really big feelings when we talked about animals in needs or the ocean or an environmental disaster that happened. And I see that you really want to help. You're feeling angry, you're sad, you're scared. It's okay to have those big feelings. I noticed that when we're talking about the environment, you seem scared. Are you feeling unsafe? And this kind of is to your point, Sandra. Kids feel scared when it feels like there's no adults around to take care of them, and there's no adult modeling healthy behavior and modeling how to take responsibility for scary things that are happening. Okay, and I would want to leave time for discussion. This is my problem, is I talk too much about all of this. But so this is about, again, acknowledging, and now we're going to move into action. I always put a caveat: take action with care, because not everybody's ready to and begin finding ways to help with climate change, but we're wanting to help meet the need. And so if there is a need to feel like there are things that I can do, we want to create some space around that. Sometimes you can ask, depending on the child, I'm wondering what you're needing around this. Maybe you feel confused, you feel lost, you feel hopeless, and then provide some resources. I think it's like the World Wildlife Fund publishes any positive improvement in the environment, and they put that on their website. So resources like that and finding things to celebrate when there's any positive changes is helpful. Maybe we can't fix climate change, but let's do something together. And so something that's fun or positive or special, that feels connecting. I like connecting with you. So this is a little more action oriented. I like connecting with you. I think it'd be really fun for us to plant a garden, work on writing letters to political advocates, whatever it is that the child may be interested in and you're interested in, because you also have to be interested. And what you really want to do is celebrate anything along the way that you do together. And hopefully this becomes a way of bonding and connecting, and it strengthens relationships. I did just want to put the 10 basic emotional needs on a slide, because I just think it's important for all of us to be aware of. Every person has a need for affection, acceptance, validation, security, autonomy, security, trust, empathy, connection. I wrote security twice, and space. So I just feel like it can never hurt to just put it on out there. These are our emotional needs, and what can we do today to help meet some of those basic emotional needs? And you're doing it right now by building trust and empathy and connection. And so, very good. And so these are some other just hot tips. Celebrate any success. If you had a difficult conversation with the student and you got through it, even if you were fumbling, even if you weren't perfect, but you gave them some space, you acknowledged their feelings, it's a win. We take it as a win. We're not perfect, but sometimes it's better to just show up That's all. Sometimes that's the only goal. If you help the student kind of identify something that's empowering to them, so they're going to do something that really helps them manage this feeling by doing a creek cleanup or finding a special event to go to with their mom or their friends. These are big successes that I think oftentimes get missed, and that can create burnout if we're not aware of it. Coming to this is a great workshop, and this is a success, and this is a step forward, and hopefully understanding something or working towards something. So that's a success. Be relatable. So, you're a human being with feelings. You're not a robot. And then I, as a recovering perfectionist, always tell myself, don't get it perfect, get it going. Better to show up and say something than nothing at all. That's my motto. Okay, so some additional resources. I write a blog. Here's the link, check it out. And that's my contact information. If you have any questions or want to talk more after, please email me or call me there. And then I just wanted to leave 15 minutes open for some conversation. I don't know how big the group is, so I don't know if we need to do.
I think we're a small enough group that if folks want to take themselves off mute,
or if anybody wants to ask any questions through the chat. What's the best way to do this, Sarah? Do you know?
Yeah, I think we're small enough that either folks
better to have breakout groups.
Can you hear me, Kate?
Does anybody have any questions on the topic before we begin to wrap up?
We've got a question from Elizabeth. Give me a second, Elizabeth. I think maybe Kate can't hear us. Give me just a second.
Sure, no problem.
Oh, no wonder. Kate, can you hear us? Okay. Elizabeth, are you talking?
Kate, can you hear us? This is a test. This is Richard speaking. Can you hear me?
Have people been able to hear me this whole time? Okay, good, because that would be really sad. I don't know what to do. What can we do for students whose guardians may not? Okay, this is a really important question. Jackie is asking. I'm so glad you brought this up. This, I think, is a really critical question, because one of the ways that we get caught is that parents do not always agree with our philosophies. And there's a lot of political kind of upheaval that are around this topic. So I think we often, as we want to be safe adults with 2 feet on the ground. Where we get caught is what is okay and what's not okay, and we don't want to overstep parents and their kind of political views, because that would not feel protective to us. So you also want to protect yourself, and you want to do what's best for the child. So I think really keeping it to feelings is important, because nobody can argue that. If a child is obviously upset and you say, I see you, I can see that you're upset. I'm wondering, has there been anybody that has talked about this with you? Or have you talked about this before? That may be a better way to word it. Have you talked about this before? It'll give you some insight into like, how is this being discussed at home? Because if this child has parents that maybe would prefer you not explore this topic with their child, then you can kind of get a sense with a question like that. And so that may be a good intro to the conversation. Hey, I'm noticing that you're upset. I'm wondering if it's something that you've talked about before, or how you're talking about it. And if they say, no, it's not something I feel comfortable talking about with my parents, you can say, that's really hard. I can see that it can feel really like you have these big feelings, but you're not sure who to talk to, and really kind of letting them guide, and you're just following. And so you're not giving it, you don't have an opinion on it either way. Your job is just guiding. And sometimes even like moving it only towards the feelings and away from climate change. And so sometimes I get caught in this as a therapist. Did I lose anybody? This technology is so hard for me. Are we all here? Okay, good. Thanks, Richard. So I try to just focus on the feelings, because if I have an opinion, I can just then get even really in my own head about like, oh no, am I going to get a phone call, which I have from parents on this topic, that maybe I just want to like keep myself safe. I don't want to have these like angry parents or people upset calling me. No, it still doesn't help, Sarah. What do I do?
Well, can you hear me now?
Richard, I'm looking for you because you have those headphones that look very official. Sarah, are you talking?
I am.
Nothing. I'm like, I thought maybe I'd turn my sound off because that would have been easy. What do I do? Oh, well. I'm sorry I don't get to talk to you guys. I'm sure you're... Hi, Sandra.
Hi. Yeah, we can hear. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
anyways, Jackie, great question, because not only do we already feel awkward about a really big, complicated topic, but then worrying about getting an angry call from a parent can add like a lot more stress and get us really stirred up and feel even more pressure to get it perfect and just right. So we're really, we call it child-led or child-centered, which means you're really letting the child take the lead on the feelings. And we have no opinion either way about the facts of climate change. We're just letting them have a feeling and holding space.
If anyone else has
Okay.
a
Any
question,
other
I'm happy to
questions? I
type
really
in
enjoyed
to the chat.
chatting.
You can just say it out loud.
I see your mouth moving, Richard, but I don't know what you're saying. Oh, are there more questions? Also, my cat has been crying at the door. I don't know if anybody can hear that, but Pumpernickel's like really wanting to come join us for the conversation. Oh, you did? Okay, I was like, oh no, Pumpernickels has questions too. She may have to be let in.
Does anyone else have any questions for Kate so I can type them in to the chat?
I'm looking at everyone's names and photos. Kate, I love your photo. Click your hiking. Scout, that's a really cute name. All right. Doesn't look like there's any other questions. Well, thank you guys so much. Oh, Sarah has announcements.
So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us and being patient with our technical challenges.
There's a book called Talking to Your Children About Climate Change, really obvious title. Loved the cat in the background. Oh, this is my life. Yeah, I'm wanting to model, you know, an adult that fumbles through difficult topics. That was the goal. Oh yes, don't forget to fill out the evaluation.
And then our next webinar is on green schoolyards and climate change. So I'm going to put the link for registration as well in the chat. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Glad you could join us today. And everyone have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you so much.